Hello and welcome to the Charles River Conservancy Parkland Show. My name is Renata from Tscharner. I'm the founder and president of the Charles River Conservancy. We're going to talk about a very exciting project on the Charles River that has been in the works for quite some time. It's the Charles River Skatepark. And as you know, the Charles River Conservancy has as its mission to make the parklands, these urban parklands, these public parklands, more active, more attractive, and more accessible. And the skate park will do all that. The Conservancy is also involved in bringing swimming back to the Charles, in making it easier to walk or run or bike along the river. We have over 2,000 volunteers a year, so we take care of the parklands. We are stewards of the parklands. And today we're talking about the skate park underneath the Zaken Bridge. And I have with me today Jason Lederer. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me, Renata.
Jason Lederer is the Director of Projects at the Charles River Conservancy, and he has been with the Conservancy for 2 years and has been working to implement that skate park. But the project goes back much longer than that. In fact, the skate park, first we had to find a location, and we're looking from an airplane, we're looking down on the site of the skate park. It's underneath the space on the ramp there, and the skate park is here in yellow. You see on there the Museum of Science. To the left, the Craigie Bridge. You see the new parks, the North Point Park, and on the right is the Zaken Bridge. So it will be between those two bridges, and it is a site that you might have seen as you take the Boston Duck Tour, because they circle around it. So it's the yellow circle there. So we've got the location, worked with the Citizen Advisory Committee meeting, with the DCR, who's the partner on that, and also the City of Cambridge. After we got the site, we worked with over 400 skaters to design that skate park, to find out what do they want, what are their dreams, what do they want to see in the skate park, as well as with some professional skaters. We have on the left, we have Andy McDonald, who grew up in Newton, and then we have Anthony Shetler, who is from the Boston region, and Canton Russell, who is with Action Sport Design, who is the skate park design firm, together with Stantec, that is doing that skate park. Then in 2011, we signed an agreement with the DCR that we will be doing the design and construction, and they are responsible for the maintenance of the skate park. About fundraising, this was a picture taken in 2007 with Peter Lynch, Caroline Lynch, Mayor Menino, a state representative and city councillor Toomey, and also then Mayor Ken Reeves. And the challenge grant by the Lynches was met, and we were able to raise $2.5 million. And here we are with the concept under the ramp of the Zaken Bridge. And now I would like Jason to speak about the technical aspects and what was all involved to make this skate park happen, from the conceptual design till implementation.
Sure. Well, a lot's happened since I've started working on the project, really mostly within the last year or so. One of the first things we need to do is go out to the site and remind ourselves what the conditions were like out there. Understanding what's on site in terms of soils and any residual types of contamination. This was an industrial site at one time. It's important for us to understand that before we can really figure out how to build on it. This photo is just of two gentlemen who were working behind a drill rig out there. They were taking soil samples and looking at some of the soil properties in the site in order to better understand basically how much the soil might compress. We also needed to update the survey. Working with the design team, you mentioned Action Sports Design and Stantec, it was really important to understand really the minutia of the site in terms of grading and existing conditions, things like where are the overhead ramps, where are the old materials that are out there left behind from the temporary ramps, a bunch of different things, looking at catch basins and all the various features so that we knew when we were designing this project what we had to work around, what we had to keep there, and then really come up with an approach for building it. After much thought, and many people can talk about this better than me, but we really decided the easiest way to break the construction up of this project is, one, to manage the soils on the site. They're a unique property, which I'll talk about in a second, and then really build the skate plaza on top of those soils, a concrete sort of cap, so to speak. And then we've sort of termed the area around the site the apron, for lack of a better term. And really, I think in the future, we'll have a better understanding, a better idea of exactly what's going to happen around the skate plaza. So we're working on that as well. So as we move towards construction, one of the things we need to think about are preparing the site and then how we deal with erosion and sediment control during construction. Obviously, construction can be messy, so be prepared to see some messy stuff out there, which is typical of any construction site, but also we want to make sure we contain it on the site and don't let it go off-site under the pathways, into the river, things like that. So really, that last slide showed things we use as barriers around the site edge, as well as vehicles entering and leaving the site. So it's a bit of a process and a bit of a procedure, and it's important to consider that. The other thing is, as I mentioned just a moment ago, is we're dealing with some residual contamination on this site. One of the things that we know is out there is asbestos, and this is a residual contaminant, not all that uncommon actually in urban soils, but residual from when the site was being used for industry. There's a long history out there, and it's really at one time open water, so it's basically just fill that could have anything in it. So we now know what's in it, and we know how better to handle it. So what this figure just basically shows is that we've put some thought into how to manage the soils.
Let me just interrupt you a moment here. What we're looking at is the area, this funny shape is the skate park, and then the area around is how we're going to do the soil. And once the image was used, that we basically take the soil, tuck it underneath, and then the skate park will serve like a barrier. It will be the mitigation because it will be underneath the barrier.
Exactly. We're not actually getting rid of the soil, but we're preventing people from coming in contact with it. And so really one of the easiest places to put it is sort of under the rug, under the skate park. So when this is a final site, it's also going to be a final sort of remediation of the site, because all of a sudden we'll have eliminated that direct exposure between people or animals or other things and that contaminated soil below. And
also, I think what's important is to remove that would be very expensive. So
that's right.
By keeping it all on the site, we can keep the cost to a minimum, and we don't need to transport it off the site.
Right. This has already happened throughout North Point Park. So the skate park's within North Point Park, and working with the Department of Conservation and Recreation's environmental professional, Rick Cote from Comprehensive Environmental. He's been really great at explaining how we need to handle soils on the site and helping our design team better understand that. So this just basically shows a cross-section of maybe 4 conditions. One, what it looks like maybe beneath the skate park, and then another one all the way to the left on this image, what it would be like maybe under a lawn area where people might be sitting. So in this case, where there's a lawn, we have 3 feet of clean soil and then a marker barrier between the existing soil and the clean soil, so that really the risk of coming in contact with it is very, very low. Concrete is really hard to break through, so the chances of coming in contact with dirty soil are much less, so therefore we need less separation. So that's what's happening in this image here.
Another important component is that MassDOT, who owns the site and who needs to get access to the ramps above, they need to get access to the pillars and to the ramps. And this map shows where they can take their trucks.
Right. From the very beginning, our design team has been working with the Massachusetts Department of Transportation, who need to service and inspect these highway columns and clean out their drains and be able to access this site on a semi-regular basis, maybe once a year, a couple times a year. But they need to make sure that they can get in there and do that. So with the skate park, we need to make sure that the skatable features that the athletes are going to be using don't prevent access by some actually pretty large machinery. So working with actually with Ron Killian at MassDOT, he's been extremely helpful as a liaison between the agency and us, explaining what the access requirements are. So you can see that there's really 3 main access locations here that we need to ensure we maintain after the project's complete.
Mm-hmm. And so that in an important way dictated some of the design, so to combine the wishes of the skaters with the technical requirements of soil and drainage. Yeah, so you can imagine to juggle all these things is quite a challenge.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when this is all completed, really nothing will be a coincidence in this site. Everything is located for a very specific reason. The primary objective was to make this as great of a skate park as possible. And Mike McIntyre from ASD and his team have done a really great job of synthesizing the community's input to do that. At the same time, we need to make sure it satisfies the environmental concerns, the MassDOT access requirements, and really the broader community that's using it. These are some of the, for example, the street elements that were developed based on community input. You'll see that there's terrain that sort of mimics what you might see on a streetscape where skaters like to skate, but also some unique what are called skate spots from local Boston history. You'll see here that in the top middle image there's what's called the hospital bank. This is a reminiscent feature from the now non-existent Boston City Hospital. So incorporating these unique features to really create a great skate environment, but also in the context of a lot of other important site constraints that we need to consider.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the kind of the middle part of the skate park. I'm not sure I like the name ashtray. Maybe we'll find a new, maybe we can find a new name for that.
It's shaped sort of like an old ashtray, but sure. Yeah. I mean, there's a variety of features that are included in, like these sort of transitional elements, as they're called, and then bowls and transition bowls. You'll see this is what's called the competition bowl, and I think some of the viewers may have already heard, or some already know, that this is sort of reminiscent of the days when skateboarders used to kind of get into empty swimming pools and use them as a feature.
In California.
California, exactly. And so now we're incorporating this into the park and bringing it to the skating community.
Yeah. So here we have the exciting parts of the design of what skateparking will be. But now let's go back to the mundane, to drainage and make sure everything is going to work well.
Sure. There's always the details that need to make this work, and drainage is a critically important element on the site. The Charles River, as I think most people know, is less than 100 feet, or less really than 100 feet from maybe the edge of the skate park. So, and all the water that runs off the skate park, all the rainwater, will ultimately end up flowing into the river. So it's important to make sure that water is as clean as possible before it enters the river. And in fact, the Charles, as we know it, a lot of work has gone into improving water quality. And everything that we do now, we want to make sure helps improve that. So this image here, and this one as well, really show some of the techniques we're using. There's a traditional sort of pipe technique that you put the water in a pipe and shoot it out to the water, to the receiving water as soon as possible. Most people realize that there's a lot of problems with that because the water doesn't get cleaned before it enters the river, and water running off urban areas is dirty. So this shows potential rainwater catchment areas, what we call rain gardens or bioretention cells that help treat rainwater runoff through natural processes, soil and plant uptake properties that are really becoming very popular and more widespread, especially here in Cambridge. You'll see that a lot in Cambridge. And really, we working with our design team, they've done an excellent job for taking this design from concept to sort of engineered design, where now we have a situation where we know how much water is running off the site, we know how much we need to treat, and it's going to be done both through rainwater catchment as well as what's called subsurface infiltration. So really trying to put as much water back in the ground as possible rather than shoot it off the site.
And I think we want to acknowledge the Charter Watershed Association. They've been helpful. They looked at the plans and they gave us their input as well as all the engineers. Now there's a whole other component that came into play, and that's the accessibility, because we want to make sure it's not only accessible for people who want to watch it, but they're also athletes in wheelchairs.
I encourage viewers to go on the internet, check out YouTube or other various sources out there, and really check out what people are doing that have sort of disabilities at this point. They're in wheelchairs, but they'll ride these bowls in an incredible way, and it's amazing to watch. So one of the things that's important in this site, and we worked with Mike McIntyre and his design team, as well as folks like Tom McCarthy at the DCR and Dan Driscoll, designers and planners who really understand accessibility. And this shows basically the red areas show how somebody who may be in a wheelchair or have an impairment that prevents them from walking can get from one area of the park to another that might be at a different level. So it allows them to access this location regardless of being able to walk, which is great. And we've heard the term being used more and more often now as universal accessibility. And really this is taking a footing in the West Coast. Places like Colorado right now have whole schools and academies dedicated to working with athletes who might be in wheelchairs or other disabilities. We want this park to accommodate those athletes. So, and it will. So we've worked very hard to do that.
So we have soil, we have water, we have access for MassDOT, but then we also wanted to think ahead of how will this park be used. Obviously every day. We want to make sure it's a place where people can sit, and we will have some landscape plans. But we also looked ahead of how an event could take place. And maybe you want to just explain the color codes here a little bit.
Sure. Well, Mike McIntyre, who was on the show earlier later last year, really explained how these parks are attracting big events, and he's done a great job at sort of identifying one way this park could be used for a large event. In fact, Paul Revere Park, which is just across the North Bank Bridge, could be a potential area for a music venue associated with a skate event at the park, and then really identifying things like points of access and entry to an event, identifying first aid locations, concession areas, basically looking at this park in the greater context of the environment around it and how it could support a large event like that. Because ultimately, this could be a facility that does that, and hopefully it will be. And
we are very lucky that the space underneath the Zaken Bridge, as you've seen from those pictures, is just as beautiful as the Zaken Bridge itself. And the Cambridge artist Ross Miller, who was on this show a few months ago, he did this extraordinary lighting underneath the bridge. So if you haven't been to that space and that new bridge, the North Bank Bridge that connects North Point Park with Revere Park, it's a whole new area of Cambridge with playgrounds, with areas to play ball. It's an absolutely amazing thing. So it will be a great place to have skate park events. So Jason, I'd like us to now move on to yet another technical component that you have referred to, which is the apron. So there is now also Halverson is doing the landscape design for that space, and
sure,
we see a landscape plan here.
Right, the DCR has been working with a Halverson Design Partnership. They're a great landscape architecture firm out of Boston, and we've been working with Cynthia Smith. Our design team really came up with some concepts for how to maybe arrange the area around the skatable surface for the community that wants to come and visit the park and watch or sit there and wait as their kids or friends are using the park. And so they've taken this idea and really run with it at this point and began to develop concepts of their own, both in terms of landscaping as well as looking at seating elements, looking at how it affects access. This is still being tweaked, the design here, but really that's going to be the next step in all of this is how this park integrates with the broader area around it, and I think it will. We've been talking about this with the community at large, and they seem to be quite excited by some of the designs that have been presented so far. So,
by the community, we're talking about the skaters, but also the Citizen Advisory Committee, who has been meeting over that skate park all along, step by step, and they were presented with a 75% design, and they've been shown the landscape design, and they're very familiar with Halverson because Halverson did the Nashua Street Park across the street where the skaters hang out now. Halverson also did the wonderful River Press Park along the Memorial Drive. So they have done many parks, and people love their parks. So we are delighted to work with them. So we have some examples of some of the landscape treatment that will be next to the skate park. Do you want to speak about maybe the top right picture there?
Sure. One of the things we're looking at are using recycled materials as much as possible in this park. And actually, these are existing granite blocks that are currently on the site. And there's a whole big stockpile of them that we can access to use for the project itself. So ideally, what will be happening once this apron area, landscape area around the skate plaza is built, is we will be able to utilize some of these blocks that have been reclaimed from places like the Miller's River, which is next to the site, and other areas around Boston. They're just great pieces of old granite that are nicely weathered, and it's a unique material. So to be able to bring it back to the site and reuse it, I think would just be a great story, as well as a functional element for the park users. So yeah, that as well as just other ways of sort of arranging them in an amphitheater type way, but really trying to incorporate these materials back into the park wherever possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you get a sense of all the various parts, and Jason has been moving all these parts forward, all the environmental permitting, the soil management, the connection with MassDOT. So there are many moving parts that all need to come together into the design. And so we are looking forward to finish to move to the 100% design, and then get construction going.
It's been a long time coming, but I feel we're getting very close.
Yeah. So it's very exciting, and the skaters have been involved, and they have contributed both ideas and financially. And many people have contributed. The city of Cambridge has contributed $200,000. The Boston Redevelopment Authority has given $100,000. The state of Massachusetts, many foundations, many individuals. So this is an amazing partnership between the Department of Conservation and the Conservancy to bring the skate park to the public, not just of Cambridge, but really of the whole region. So there are. I think we are, you might have seen the banner that is out there. That was when the banner was hung. There's a banner there now, and it lists some of the donors. You see also the Boston Duck Tours going by. There are some 50
I think it's like
500,000 people
like
a year that go by that, and the duck tour drivers always talk about the skate park as well as about the swimming. So there are a lot of fans out there of the skate park. So go out and check the site. Now there is one other important component out there, and that's EF. This is a rendering of the new EF building. The skate park site is immediately to the right of this new building. The metal structure is already up, and what is so exciting is that EF as a company is a very dynamic company. They were very generous and gave us pro bono office space for several years. They have a building just to the left of this picture. But this new building will have 2 floors of restaurants facing the water, and that will be a wonderful place for people who use the skate park, people who visit the skate park, to be on the water and near the skate park. And it will be around the clock activity, because EF works all over the world with their Hult Business School. So we are very excited to have them as our neighbor, and we work very closely with them to make sure that those 2 facilities will work together well. So we are getting close, and I want to tell you, Jason, it has been a great pleasure working with you, because to move a project like that forward with so many agencies, so many players, is not an easy task. And your background in geography and permitting and project management was really wonderful. And we're working closely with Carl Hagland at the DCR and Conrad Crawford, and also many of the other DCR people, Joe Orphan and Jack Murray, and of course Commissioner Lambert. Extraordinary team working on all of that.
There's a lot of commitment, so there'll be a lot of celebration when this is being used by the community.
Yes,
so.
And here we have a picture of how the skate park will look like when it's finished, underneath the ramps, near the Zaken Bridge, next to the river, and we are very excited to see that happening. Jason, thank you very much for your wonderful work and the wonderful show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.